John Dickerson is the CBS News political director and moderator of Face the Nation, and good enough to join us here in New York. John, thanks as always for being here. I want to ask you about some reporting of our Major Garrett today that Rex Tillerson, the ExxonMobil CEO, may have climbed to the top of the short list for the as yet unfilled position of Secretary of State. It does bear mentioning this is a man who has done at least business all around the globe. He is obviously a fossil fuel ally and reportedly has rather close ties to Russia and Vladimir Putin. What to make then of his candidacy?
Well, I don't know. We'll see if he's actually named. I think what to make of at least the fact that his name is now being floated by people inside the Trump organization is that the interesting path that the Secretary of State pick has taken, because there seems to be that it seems that Donald Trump was, and may still even be, genuinely interested in Mitt Romney, which would be extraordinary for somebody who has punished his enemies as much as Donald Trump has and who's made a career of that. And also the interesting thing that we've watched, which is the different forces within Trump world making the case against Romney and then those making the case for him. We're seeing in this pick a lot of the topography of Trump world. You've got Reince Priebus kind of arguing for Mitt Romney, arguing that you should be looking forward and not back. Kellyanne Conway saying it would be disastrous because it would be an affront to the grassroots that had elected Donald Trump. You can imagine that argument playing out again and again and again over the course of his administration. And so the fact that Trump is still looking for new people to perhaps slot into that suggests that it's an unresolved issue, obviously, A. But B, when Donald Trump talked about Mitt Romney, he talked about how he looked the job and I think that is really something that's on his mind.
Central casting,
central casting, yes. He talked about that a lot in all of the meetings that he had and talked to people about that post. So I think it's fascinating what it tells us about Donald Trump more than what it tells us about the person who ultimately gets the job.
The Pew Research Center released some numbers speaking to the electorate's feelings about the cabinet picks thus far. Roughly half the cabinet's been filled, some rather in an orthodox fashion. What do you make of the fact, though, that America would seem to be far less confident in the president-elect's choices than those of his predecessors?
Yeah, I think the choices part of it, I think, gets, I'm not sure how much, I don't know how much it matters. I think people can change their views on that pretty quickly. In other words, they don't know these people, they're not names you know, and therefore that's uncertain. Even James Mattis is a name a lot of people know in Washington, isn't well known in the country. Oftentimes, so when Barack Obama, for example, picked Hillary Clinton, wow, that's a name everybody knows. The people who liked Hillary Clinton approve of that. It sends a signal about stability. Donald Trump is sending the opposite signals. He's sending signals of disruption. And so that naturally people are going to be kind of wary about that. I thought the other interesting Pew number was just how bad his approval ratings are, Donald Trump's approval ratings. Usually you get a bump when you win. Yeah. If you start with approval ratings that low, that's tough. I mean, you're supposed to be the president of the whole country. And if the majority of the country disapproves of you before you've even taken the job, it's harder, given the tough decisions you have to make as president, to turn those numbers around. So that's a challenge for him.
We know that he follows his ratings. To him, they are not unlike the television ratings of a former life of his. We also have seen him react, it would seem almost in real time, to attacks that he sees against himself in the media. Is there a sense, and perhaps Secretary of State becomes outsized in this way as well, that if nothing else, you said it might not matter, but how much do you think it matters to him?
That people approve of his pick?
Yeah.
I don't think
approve of him.
I don't think he cares. He thinks the rating agency is rigged. So with television, in part because the numbers were good, he thought, well, the great ratings mean something. Yeah. But in this case, he thinks the polling organizations don't represent America, and therefore their numbers don't mean anything. So I think he's rolling on just fine in that regard, because he doesn't. He basically, I think, believes that they were as wrong as they were about the election.
I want to get you out of here on this one. A very big thing yesterday, the passing of Senator John Glenn, by any measure, a national hero for so many reasons. But really, later in life, this huge chapter as a lawmaker that perhaps many outside the state of Ohio are not quite familiar with. What sort of figure was he on Capitol Hill?
Well, on Capitol Hill, he was the kind of figure, I mean, I'm trying to think of that now. We have John McCain, who has that, just one of these, even bigger than a senator, had being a senator, there's a pretty big deal, and they're all have a sense of themselves. But John Glenn he was sort of a walking statue, and so, but didn't behave that way. Was not. He sort of was what he was a quiet American hero, who was not only quiet in the way he behaved, but also had all of those attributes that parents used to teach their kids, which was do the right thing when no one's looking, have character when it counts, and so that's the kind of person he was as a senator and as a man, and we don't really have that many people like that walking around anymore. We have so many American heroes as a result of the two wars that America has been fighting, but he was still of a different order even than a military hero because of obviously what he did in the space race.
A paragon who deserved to be one, certainly. John Dickerson, as always, we appreciate it.
Thanks, Josh.
And please do join John on Face of the Nation this weekend. His guests will include President-elect Donald Trump's senior transition advisor, Kellyanne Conway, as well as Arizona Senator John McCain, who you just heard him invoke there, and Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders. Again, that's this Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern right here on CBSN.